Hello, my name is Jo. Welcome to Reading Jovina, and today's video is going to be about Rhys from ACOTAR series. So as you can see, I've already got my shisha, and the weather outside is very rainy, so you're gonna probably hear it, but this is the best weather for me. I feel always relaxed and calm, and my mind is clear, so I'm ready to analyze Rhys. I've been wanting to do this for a while now. So first and foremost, I want to say that there will be spoilers ahead, of course, for ACOTAR, for Avatar: The Last Airbender, for Pride and Prejudice, Vampire Diaries, Six of Crows, and Stardust. There's going to be a lot of spoilers ahead. So if you have not seen any of these named series, franchises, yeah, just know that I'm going to compare and contrast a lot. So from there, let's just get started. First and foremost, I wanted to say why I actually wanted to do an in-depth analysis of Rhys and not so much of the other characters. So I was actually talking to a colleague of mine. I'm an English major, and I was talking to a colleague of mine after a lecture, and she said, oh, all the YA novels have these bad boys who end up being the main romantic interests of the main person, and like this is just a common trope that just happens all the time. And I was thinking, well, the YA genre is aimed at all the young adults, that's why it's called YA. And I was thinking, so this is what they see as the ideal boyfriend, somebody who has toxic behavior and somebody who doesn't really repent for what they've done. It's just kind of glossed over, and I really wanted to talk about that. So yeah, that is kind of the reason why I wanted to review Rhys and analyze him, overanalyze him, I might add. So let's get started with the actual analysis. First and foremost, I wanted to talk about villain of nature versus villain of circumstance. I briefly mentioned this in my previous video that was a review on the whole ACOTAR first book, where I talked about Richard III from Shakespeare and Rhys, and how I analyzed Richard III also as a villain of circumstance and not as a villain of nature. So yeah, if you want to check that out, I will be linking it down below. So the first short explanation that I wanted to give is that Rhys is essentially a villain of circumstance as well. He is forced into a kind of pick and choose between a bad and a worse choice. However, my issue is with the aftermath. So he is portrayed in the end as a good character. And when we contrast this with Richard III, Richard III is colored by the Tudor myth, and he is at no point characterized as a good person, as a good man. So we are not inclined to forgive him, to fall in love with him, to marry him, and whatever. We sympathize with him, maybe. We hate him, yes. But at no point do we justify his actions. While for Rhys, we have this suggestion from the author that we should justify his misdeeds. And this is where I have my issues. Now, some spoilers for Avatar, or Atla. So Zuko is renowned for having the best character arc, like a character growth arc and redemption arc in the popular media nowadays. And I do have to agree, he is one of the best redemption arcs that I have seen up to date. If you do have any recommendations for other good character arcs, I love them. I love recommendations. So Zuko, however, is not a villain by nature. He is not a villainous evil character, and he at no point displays any malice, any true malice. While Rhys does have these moments where you're not really sure if he is evil or if he's not evil. So while talking about Zuko, we have to say that we sympathize with him in a certain way, and with Rhys, we're not sure if we're supposed to sympathize or not, at least in the first ACOTAR book. So now from there, I have to say that we're going to have to continue to redemption versus clarification arcs. This is something that I've already mentioned. So, redemption versus clarification. Redemption is when somebody asks for forgiveness for some of his actions or her actions and actually gets it. In this specific example of ACOTAR, we are reading the book through Feyre's eyes. So it is in the first person point of view, and we are seeing and hearing everything that she does. So we see Rhys as the main kind of negative character, as the antagonist, and then after that we're introduced to the big bad evil, Amarantha, and we see that Rhys is not that bad compared to her. So compared to a Dark Lord, Rhys, the morally gray character, is not evil. Okay, I bought that. So the redemption arc includes getting forgiveness for actions and learning and growing from those actions. If we take as an example Zuko's redemption arc, he does bad things because he is forced to do bad things. So in the beginning, in the beginning of his life, he did something against his father, but he did it because he was a good person. So he stood up for soldiers that were going to die on the battlefield, and in doing so, he insulted his father, and his father scarred him, burned his face, and banished him, and gave him essentially like an impossible task to do. And in order to complete this task, Zuko does a lot of bad things. I'm not excusing his actions. However, during the we meet him in medias res, so in the middle of this quest for the Avatar, and we are shown that he is the antagonist. But he also has a charismatic figure, Uncle Iroh, who is narrating his story the whole time and who believes that Zuko is, in the end, a good person. So we have, from the beginning, different things that we need to note about Rhys and Zuko. Zuko does have a good narrator of his story, a likable narrator who is definitely good. And he is forced into these choices because he is good. He was good. Then he struggles to get back into good graces of the reader or the watcher in this case. And even in the end, when he is forgiven by almost everybody, when he has repented for his sins, so to speak, he still does have trouble gaining trust from certain people, for example, Katara. But with Rhys, we don't have any narrator. He doesn't waver. He doesn't trust anybody. Like, Zuko confides in Katara at one point. There is that scene in Ba Sing Se where they are underground and where Zuko tells his story to Katara and she sympathizes with him. However, Rhys doesn't have these moments. He doesn't betray any of his inner thoughts. We don't see any of his backstory narrated to us as he's doing these evil deeds. So we don't actually know what to think other than he is an evil lackey of this big evil Amarantha. And that is where we have the first problem. To Feyre, who is watching Rhys and who is meeting Rhys, she only sees the evil, so to speak, or the morally gray when he starts helping her. Because still, as it is shown in ACOTAR, while she is making these deals with him, she is essentially making a deal with the devil, and that's how it's shown. She hesitates. He literally has to twist a bone that's in her arm in order to make her kind of complete that deal with him, in order to make her accept his deal. So he does not really have these moments of vulnerability, so to speak. Sure, there are a couple of moments when he's like telling her his story, but it's very brief and very surface telling. There is not any in-depth narration and any chance for the reader or for the watcher to see that Rhys is actually a good person. Not until a few books later. So, clarification versus redemption arc. Clarification is just when somebody is narrating what happened and kind of making excuses for why it happened and why it was fine that happened. And this is what happens with Rhys. And this is where my problems actually start with his character. Because I really liked him in the first book. And I was rooting for him to be a good character. But not in the way that he was portrayed. So I believe that redemption arcs and clarification arcs should go hand in hand, because you need to clarify why you did what you did, and then you need to ask for forgiveness, especially if it's first person point of view and that person is your true love, or in the ACOTAR series, your mate. But at no point does Rhys ask for forgiveness from Feyre by confessing his sins, and by asking her for forgiveness, essentially ask the reader also for forgiveness. And that is where I have a problem, because Zuko learns from his misdeeds and he improves. He grows as a character. Rhys doesn't. He just clarifies, makes excuses, and then continues on in the same way. Maybe not towards Feyre, because he is the picture of feminism. that's what I've heard him called. He's been called the picture of feminism. However, if you look at the way he treats Feyre's sisters, Nesta and Elaine, he doesn't treat them as a feminist. He treats them essentially the same way he treated Feyre in the beginning. And that's where I have my issues. So let's see about the aftermath of Rhys's arc. Okay. The aftermath of his arc is felt most strongly in the supporting cast and the impact that he has on Tamlin's character. Because Tamlin is a red herring in the first book, and he is not Feyre's true love. He has to turn bad and bland in order for Rhys to take the main love interest spot. So, because Tamlin is shown as a noble lord and not really bad by any means, in the following books, after the first book, in the following books, he is shown as this PTSD, overprotective, ignorant man, borderline evil, willing to do anything to force Feyre into being with him. And this is, I believe, the result of Rhys's clarification arc and not his redemption arc. Because if Rhys had a redemption arc, he would have repented and he would have changed, and then he would have been the better choice naturally, regardless of who Tamlin was. However, due to him staying the same person that he was before, Tamlin had to change, and Tamlin had to become the bad guy. Do you see what I mean? So, the supporting cast also, I'm talking here about Cassian, as Moore, and the others that are, what is her name? Amryn, all the other people who are around Rhys and who say that he is good before and that he is good after. This supporting cast is built in order to show off Rhys the good person and to kind of sweep his bad actions under the rug and say, well, he was doing it under duress. Yes, he was doing it under duress. But was he wrong? Did he feel that even his actions under duress were wrong? That's my question. And why didn't he apologize for them? Why didn't he ask Feyre to forgive him? And why didn't he change from being how he was before, under duress? Okay. So these characters are built essentially to showcase his good sides. So we have the Moore, Moore, who is a woman that he saved essentially and gave her a safe haven. We have Az, again, that he saved. Cass, again, that he saved. Amryn, that he managed to kind of make into an ally, and she is legendary. So all of these characters are built to show off how good Rhys is. And I don't think that, like, if you look around your friend circle, do any of these people exist to showcase you? No. No, they don't. They are their own people. And you just click or don't click. You're not friends because you're showcasing each other. And especially because you're not showcasing your, let's say, group leader. If you are in a relationship like this with people, yeah, that's not a good relationship, probably. But this is just my 2 cents. You may have other opinions, and if you do leave them for me in the comments. I love reading why I was wrong, or if I was wrong in my analysis. All right, so this is kind of what I had to say on the topic of the aftermath of Rhys's clarification arc and not redemption arc, how it affected everybody else in the book series. Next, I wanted to talk about the enemies to lovers trope. Oh my gosh. Why? Alright. So, let's talk about a couple of enemies to lovers that I think are done, let's say, occasionally. So, we have from Vampire Diaries, Damon and Elena. We have Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. From Six of Crows, we have Nina and Matthias. And from Stardust, we have Tristan and Yvain. I have compared Stardust to ACOTAR so many times already. I know that this is like across all genres, but this is a comparison, so let me do what I want. Let me compare. So let's start with Damon and Elena. Oh my god. So, Damon is not good. At no point does he say he's good. And he stays the bad guy. Sure, he has his good moments. He has the hero moments. But also he has the bad and evil and morally gray moments. And that's why I believed their relationship. Because they have problems. Because Elena, well, she does love Damon. She loves parts of him. And she doesn't like other parts of him. So that is the basis of their relationship, and they constantly have problems with that. And I did enjoy it. As bad as Vampire Diaries was, I thought that they did a fairly good job when it came to kind of this antagonist becoming a reluctant ally and then showcasing that he is not completely evil. Damon is by no means good, but he doesn't pretend to be good. And that's why I believed him. And also, Elena, there's many issues that I have with her. She loves him because of his goodness. And she is, while not the ideal character to showcase, she tries to do the best that she can in the bad circumstances that she's kind of tossed into. And loving Damon is a bad choice, but she does it in, I think, a believable way. So yeah. Enemies to lovers, Damon and Elena, I would rate them maybe 7 out of 10. Next we have Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. Oh my gosh, Jane Austen. She's masterful. She is masterful. I will actually be linking a video down below that I really enjoyed about Mr. Darcy and why everybody's inclined to like Mr. Darcy. I recently watched it, and that's actually why I included them in this video. So yeah, Mr. Darcy is shown, I'm going to talk about the 2005 movie. So he is shown as this awkward guy who does good things behind the scenes. And he does things the best that he can from what information he has. But yeah, he grows throughout the story. So he grows because he falls in love. He changes his ways and he does better. And he asks for forgiveness in the end. And we are inclined to give him that forgiveness, just as Elizabeth is, when she realizes that he's not just the pompous jerk that she is prejudiced, okay? She's prejudiced to believe in the beginning. So yeah, on one hand, he is the awkward antagonist. I wouldn't go so far as to call them enemies to lovers, but surely kind of like opposites to lovers, let's say. But yeah, he changes throughout this book and throughout the movie, and he grows as a character. And that's the reason why Elizabeth, in the end, loves him, accepts him, marries him. Perfect. Not toxic. Okay. Next, we have Six of Crows, Nina and Matthias. Nina and Matthias, I have a lot to say about this. I will actually be making a separate video probably on the Grishaverse. Especially with the popularity that now this new show has. I've watched the first season and I really liked it. But anyways, Nina and Matthias, I won't be giving any spoilers, but let's just talk about their relationship. So they start off definitely as enemies because Nina is a Grisha and Matthias is a Druskella, I think that's how you pronounce it. So he is essentially a hunter of Grishas, and he believes her to be a witch. They both have prejudices against one another. However, they bond, they grow, they learn that they are not just their own stereotypes, and they fall in love with the other person. And they become agreeable, and they're not toxic because they support each other through all the good and the bad. And while they like in the beginning of the relationship, you see the hatred, the mistrust, then there's still that kind of note of mistrust until like they're still fighting, they're fighting their feelings, but they still don't trust one another. And then in the end, they definitely believe in one another and trust one another with their lives, and they're willing to fight for one another to the death. So I would say, okay, that's maybe a little bit too far for a YA couple, but still, I think that there are a great example of a non-toxic relationship between an enemy and like between two enemies in the end. And finally, Tristan and Yvain from Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Okay. Again, calling these two enemies is strange. Let's just say that there are two characters that have different motivations and different drives in the book. There's also a movie, and you might want to watch it. It's with Michelle Pfeiffer and Robert De Niro. It's really good. Claire Danes actually plays Yvain. It's really nice. All right. So aside from this small promotion kind of interlude, yeah, Tristan and Yvain. So Tristan goes to find a fallen star, and he doesn't know that the star is actually Yvain. Yvain is the star that fell, and he puts a chain on her, and he tries to drag her back to his lady love because he promised his lady love that he would bring her a fallen star. And on the way back home, they fall in love with one another. I've heard a lot of people analyze this as abuse or as I don't know, like bad behavior and bad choices. And I do agree, maybe chaining someone up is not the best thing to do in order to get them back to your lady love. Yeah, don't don't chain people up unless there's exigent circumstances, you know, like but anyways, so aside from that, I like the fact that they end up knowing more and more about one another, and then falling in love with the people that they are. Again, it's the same with Nina and Matthias, right? They overcome their original frame of the character. They grow, and they fall in love with the personality behind the kind of trope that they are. So this is why they are a good example of enemies to lovers, okay? While with Feyre and Rhys, we don't really get that. And here's why. First, Feyre goes through too much change, and she is vulnerable when Rhys makes his move. Sure, I do like the fact that he's attempting to help her, and I do think that that is kind of like one part of his redemption, and I was rooting for him to do something good for her. But also, I felt like he was taking a little bit of an advantage of her, especially because she changes from human to high fae, and she is not the same as she was before, and she needs time to adjust. If we take a look at the other enemies to lovers tropes, they all happen over a long span of time, while Feyre and Rhys don't have that time. It's just a couple of months, and then she's living with him. Also, Rhys doesn't have any kind of remorse in the change in his behavior. He does have a few redemption moments. One of them is trying to help Feyre, and then in the end helping her away from the wedding. Another that I wanted to mention is the moment that he's the only one who's fighting against Amarantha physically, so without any of his magic, and we do know that high fae tend to rely on their magic, but he fights without any magic physically against Amarantha, trying to save Feyre. So he does have a couple of shiny moments, but that would make him maybe closest to Daemon in our comparison. However, after like the first book, he is not shown as this morally gray with both good and bad behaviors kind of character. He is shown as a thoroughly good character, and that's where we have a problem. If you remember, Damon and Elena have their issues the whole time. They have their issues because Damon is Damon. But Rhys says at no point, he just like abandons all of his gray morality. And then he says, oh, it was just a mask that I was wearing in order to protect other people. Apologize for it. Grow from it. And don't repeat that behavior. He doesn't do that. So that is it for my enemies to lovers kind of trope analysis. Let's continue on to maybe a little bit of an over-analyzing this thing. And that is talking about logical fallacies. A logical fallacy is the use of invalid or otherwise faulty reasoning or wrong moves in the construction of an argument. This is a definition from the internet. So essentially it is jumping to conclusions, making the wrong kind of logical connection from one thing to another. And here I'm going to mention two of these logical fallacies. One is the red herring, and this means that a statement is made in order to draw our attention away from the issue at hand. Don't confuse this with the literary device that I was mentioning in my first video. Like a red herring is, as a literary device, it is still used to draw attention, but it's not negative. A logical fallacy is a faulty logic, and usually it's done unconsciously. So for example, a red herring would be, woman says, I'm so hurt that he broke up with me. And then her friend says, just think of all the starving children in Africa, honey. All your problems pale in comparison. So she's essentially drawing the attention away from this hard breakup in order to say there's worse things. There's, it's a first world problem that you're having with your breakup. That's a red herring logical fallacy. Another logical fallacy that we have in the case of Rhys, in my opinion, is a non sequitur, or it does not follow. And this is a statement that does not follow the previous one logically. For example, somebody asks, how is the weather outside? And somebody else answers, it's 2 p.m. Okay. But I asked about the weather. It's getting a little bit brighter right now. But the point is, it does not logically follow. How I think that this logical fallacy was made in the ACOTAR books is with Rhys, okay? And with the follow-up. So, in the most simplified form, Rhys is good. Rhys had a gun to his head and had to make hard decisions, but Rhys is still good. I believe that this is a non sequitur. So, if he was good, and then he's forced into bad circumstances and has to make hard decisions, it does not follow that he's good. There is no point in this. There is no logic to connect these three. If he was good, he would be torn about his decisions and he would amend. He would make amends. He would apologize. He would learn from this behavior. But we don't see him doing that. We see him doing the exact same thing afterwards. So I believe that this is a non sequitur. It does not follow that he is still a good person, that he is still the good guy, unless he makes some kind of amends, or he has a redemption arc and he redeems himself in our eyes. So, logical fallacy number one, non sequitur. Logical fallacy number two is the red herring, and that is the aftermath. So, I believe that Sarah J. Maas unconsciously wrote this non sequitur and then afterwards tried to kind of compensate for it by making other things happen and drawing our attention away from the problem. So with the red herring, she is trying to put Rhys back into our good graces by making Tamlin evil, by giving us all the good things that Rhys has done and is doing right now, by making Feyre fall in love with him. So she's drawing our attention away from the issue, which is Rhys's bad behavior, and putting the attention on his good choices right now and good choices back then before this issue that he had. So essentially, I believe that these two logical fallacies made Rhys the character that he is, and that they were the problems that kind of, for me at least, made me dislike his character, and that they were, um, done unconsciously. So yeah, it was just a case of you should have paid more attention while you were writing him. Also, they impacted his character because Sarah J. Maas in the later books tries to overcompensate so much for these logical fallacies, for this problem, by saying that Rhys is always giving Feyre a choice, and he continuously gives her choice, like to choose. So yeah, I think that it was a huge impact on his character. While he could have been an interesting, morally gray character, and even more intriguing than as the main love interest. In conclusion, I believe that if Rhys had been given a redemption plus glorification arc, he would have been a much better character. If Rhys had sought forgiveness for his actions and learned from their actions, from these actions, I would have liked him so much more. I would have been inclined to believe him, actually. If Rhys had shown Feyre, and by showing Feyre, he showed the readers, right, his struggle, then we would have sympathized with him, just like we sympathize with Zuko. And I think if somebody else had given us Rhys's background before showing him as this lackey of Amarantha, for example, that could have come from Tamlin, I believe that we would have been more inclined to forgive him. So something like a narration by Uncle Iroh, but in this case, a narration by Tamlin or a narration by Lucien or something like that. And even more so, if it had been his enemy that was giving us this information that Rhys was at one point good, that would have been chef's kiss. So, in the end, we have to ask ourselves, does the end justify the means? Sure, he ended up winning this war against Amarantha, but did it justify him disrespecting Feyre, taking away her free will, essentially borderline sexually assaulting her? Did it justify the means? And could this have been prevented? With that, it's a wrap up. I'm done here. I still do like Rhys's character, maybe not so in the later books, but I do enjoy his character in the beginning. And yeah, let me know what you thought. Did you overanalyze him as much as I did? Do you agree with my analysis? Do you disagree? And so on. So yeah, that's it for today. And I hope that you will leave me a comment, toss me a message, tell me if you would like me to do some other character, or if you would enjoy another book being reviewed by me and being overanalyzed by me, because I can't stop myself from doing that. So yeah, see you later and have a good day. Bye bye.